This is our day-to-day life right now. We are living in what feels like a third world country.
When a hurricane hits, there's the disaster we hear about.
Tropical storm Helene brought catastrophic damage to North Carolina.
A storm surge that officials are calling unsurvivable.
Third deadliest hurricane to hit the United States in the last 50 years.
And then there's the disaster that happens after.
They're offering them $750 to people whose homes have been washed away.
Do you understand why Americans lack confidence in FEMA leadership?
What organization is this? Do you know whose tents these are? Are these FEMA?
In Western North Carolina, a crisis is quietly unfolding.
FEMA has moved out. FEMA is gone.
It is so much bigger than anybody can truly wrap their head around.
The systems that are designed to help people recover and rebuild are failing. And I wanted to know why. It turns out the problem is a lot bigger than I imagined. And if we don't change course, things could get much worse.
Every minute that we waste, we're risking people's lives. We're risking the future of entire communities.
Wow, this is a lot of stuff. Goodness gracious. I'm John.
David.
David, good to meet you, man.
John Council works with Down Home, North Carolina. Long after most volunteers have packed up and left, they're helping people pick up the pieces.
This is our home. We didn't intend to turn it into a landfill. I got laid off in October, and not due to the storm, but that just made trying to procure help on our own, trying to get a dumpster, trying to get dump trucks on our own, just impossible. The little bit of money that we received from FEMA, that kind of basic $750 that most received, went towards putting walls back up.
Before I came here, I assumed this was the kind of thing FEMA was supposed to help with. But it turns out I was wrong.
The response from FEMA, in my own personal experience, was extremely disappointing.
Lauren lives in one of the hardest hit areas of the state. Many people here are still living in temporary shelters.
You will see that there's a lot of tents over here. Those are still showers. So we are 9 weeks out, and that's where everybody that are living in the tents are coming to take showers.
Have you had some good turnout with the weather getting colder?
Yeah, we still have pretty good turnouts with people coming in. Most of them to wash clothes or, take a shower. And this site's gonna be closed Monday night.
Oh, Monday?
Yeah,
Wow.
we're gonna move all this out because it's no longer needed. It's a government thing, but...
What organization is this? Do you know whose tents these are? Are these FEMA?
Yeah,
This is FEMA.
When Helene hit, FEMA worked with local governments to set up community care stations like these to give people access to food, water, internet, and other essential supplies. But now that a few months have passed, they're starting to close up shop.
He said he had a really good turnout, but the government is deciding to move the camp. But we have all of these people living in tents all around here. Does that add up to you?
When your entire life has been destroyed, you've lost everything you've owned, you want somebody to come in and fix it. There is this expectation that that is what FEMA or someone in the government is going to do. Unfortunately, that is not the approach to emergency management that we take in this country.
Here's the thing. FEMA isn't really designed to offer long-term help to individuals. People impacted by a disaster can apply to FEMA to get temporary housing and a one-time payment of $750. But for other costs, people are expected to rely on something else.
Across the country, insurance is typically thought of as kind of being your best bet for getting a chunk of money to be able to move through the recovery process.
Insurance is supposed to help people pay to rebuild their lives after a disaster. But in North Carolina, we're beginning to see the dangers of that approach.
So right before Hurricane Helene, I was 39 weeks pregnant. We had just opened our second location of Scorch, 3 weeks prior? I think I was still texting and emailing when I was in the hospital in labor with trying to figure out all this stuff.
Insurance claims.
Yeah, insurance stuff. Yeah. So it was just like never ending.
Ellen and Farrell own a fitness studio in Asheville's River Arts District.
This is one of the first videos we got. That's when kind of everyone started to find out that the whole building was underwater up to like 9-10 feet. So it was like, oh, we're having a baby, and now one of my big chunks of my yearly income is not there anymore.
Because it was near the river, their business had flood insurance.
I'm getting $11,000 from the flood claim, which covers about one machine, and we had 12. So I would say probably loss is probably close to $300,000. It was pretty devastating, and it was kind of like, well, I'm never going to be able to reopen.
Ellen and Farrell didn't get close to enough money from insurance, but at least they had some coverage. In North Carolina's hardest hit counties, less than 1% of people had flood insurance.
And that means that one of our main sources of aid for people in recovery is not going to be there in this event.
It would be nicer if the recovery process was more streamlined and you get money, and because it's not just hurricanes, there's the fires out west, and Texas, everybody froze a couple years ago. We're not prepared for the weather changes.
Climate change and its effect on hurricanes.
Our hotter planet is making those events more destructive.
Fossil fuel companies knew for decades, through their own research, that burning their products would lead to rising global temperatures. And it's rising temperatures that make extreme weather events more likely and more damaging. They covered up this research, and now we're all paying the price for it. Taxpayers spend 6 times more money on disasters now than they did a decade ago. And that's a problem, because even though FEMA is limited in what it gives individuals, it's one of the main sources of funding for bigger infrastructure projects. FEMA pays to rebuild roads, bridges, schools, and water systems, and to make our infrastructure more resilient to future storms. The agency has $20 billion in its 2025 budget, but it's already sent out close to half.
FEMA is still paying out money for Katrina recovery 19 years later. This has become a problem in more recent years as we get towards the end of the year, FEMA starts to get worried about how much funding is left in that disaster relief fund.
When that happens, FEMA stops funding any long-term recovery projects to save in case another disaster happens. It's a vicious cycle, and one that only stands to get worse as disasters get more expensive and more frequent.
There is no possible way for our current approach to emergency management to meet the needs of the future. And the way I know that is because it's not meeting the needs of today.
For a storm like Helene that caused an estimated $54 billion in damages, there's a massive gap between the money that's available and what's needed.
Whatever resources can help more should help more. I feel like that 1%, you know what I mean? That top percentage should be doing something.
The people who are profiting off this should be the ones helping to at least remedy the situation.
That idea that fossil fuel companies should pay for damage caused by their products is a real solution that some states are pursuing. Back in June, the New York legislature passed a bill called the Climate Change Superfund Act. It would make fossil fuel companies pay into a fund based on their historic emissions in the state. That money would then be used to upgrade infrastructure and respond to extreme weather events when they happen. The fund could raise $75 billion for New York over the next 25 years, if Governor Kathy Hochul decides to sign it into law before the end of the year. Vermont already passed a similar version, and if it succeeds in New York, the approach could spread to other states. Policies like these would at least shift some of the cost back to the corporations who got us here, and create a new revenue stream to support our already overloaded system. Until then, communities are left to bridge the gap themselves.
People here have been through things that we never should have had to go through.
The financial toll that it's taken on a lot of folks who are low income, working class. My fear is that repair costs will be too steep.
It would be nice if people understood that it's not the quick fix that they see by having volunteer groups coming from out of state. Long-term assistance really is what people wind up needing.
Thanks for watching. If you haven't already, please subscribe to our channel so we can keep doing stories like this one. If you have ideas for other stories you want us to cover, leave them in the comments. And if you want to donate to help support people in Western North Carolina, there are links in the description below.